What we expected is now official. Nick Mullens will start against the Cincinnati Bengals. So where is this going to take the Vikings now? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that? 3, 1, 2, 3.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to those of you who listen to this show every single day. My hashtag everydayers. Love hearing from you. Thank you also to those of you who are new, who are just joining. Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Luke. You can find the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is an audio listening place like SiriusXM or the SiriusXM app. You can also find this show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. It's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Today on the show, first things first, we got to go over the news of the day from the Kevin O'Connell presser. A lot of optimism around Justin Jefferson, and then, of course, the official QB change, making permanent the decision that they made in the middle of the Raiders game. And we'll talk about what that maybe changes in the offense and what it represents. But I'm going to be honest. I honestly, I just want to talk about Flores. I just want to talk about the defense. I'm going to do that for most of the show, and you can't stop me because man, they're hitting a stride. It's really cool. I'll just get lost in it if I start now. So we'll get to that later. First things first, Nick Mullens, starting quarterback. Okay, here's where we're at. So we're now going to go to the fourth starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings season. That's never great, but obviously, you lose Kirk Cousins and you go into a carousel afterwards. Is some tumult is to be expected. But what it kind of means is that a lot of what they tried to do against the Raiders with Dobbs is going to go out the window. We're going to go back to the timing-based stuff, the true Kevin O'Connell, Kirk Cousins offense that we brought. We specifically traded for Nick Mullens last offseason or last preseason from the Raiders to kind of be the backup that steps in this particular situation. And the only reason that we had to go to Hall and then to Dobbs was because he was unavailable with a back injury that is now in the past. So what can you expect from Nick Mullens? This is a question I'm sure a lot of people have. I've written about this and at Wide Left, and I've done a podcast about this, or a Patreon about this, patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. If you want to see some tape and you want a little more detail, you can go into that. And I talked about it a little bit over the bye week as well, because I was kind of calling for this. I thought that what Josh Dobbs had done over the Broncos game and the Bears game was enough to say maybe we should go to a different guy. And I guess Kevin O'Connell now agrees with me. He didn't before. Now he does. So the reason that I was calling for that is mainly timing. With Dobbs, a lot of the balls were late, and a big part of that is... And after watching the tape against the Raiders game, I think I mischaracterized this in the last couple of days. So I want to correct myself. I had characterized it as slow reads, ball coming out late, arriving late, bringing defenders back into the play, all that stuff. I don't know if I would necessarily say that. I actually think that Dobbs was going through the reads pretty quickly. He was going very deep into the read. He would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sometimes in that Raiders game. And in a reasonable enough time frame for my liking, I guess. I think it's more of a velocity thing. And Mullens has a better arm. I think still that Jaren Hall has the best arm in the room, which is who I was actually calling for. But Mullens has a better arm than Dobbs. He can hit more throws. He can put more zip on throws, more velocity on throws. This offense and its timings were built for Kirk Cousins, who puts all these guys' arms to shame, right? And he can really wing one in there. Mullens, he can wing one in there okay. It's not bad. It's not, the asset that it is with Kirk, but it works. It functions. It operates the system. And it can attack zone coverage a lot better that way. Man coverage, still a little bit difficult. You still are either going to have, tight window throws if Jefferson isn't there. And I don't know. I'll ask the Bengals guys tomorrow. I don't know what the Bengals are running on the back end nowadays. So I'll ask them what's up. But that'll be crossover Thursday, so get excited for that. But the ball will be out on time. It will arrive at the time it is supposed to, rather than floating for that extra half a beat, because it's just not that much harder of a throw. That said, Justin Jefferson's going to matter a lot if he plays. Now, there's a clip going around with Justin Jefferson doing some charity thing or something, and a kid like walking next to him is like, "Are you going to play on Saturday?" He says yes. I don't know. I saw the clip out of context, so I have no idea what the context of that clip is. But it does track with the optimism based on his injury. He did go to the hospital. That was precautionary. And it seemed like he was pretty much checked out and cleared, because he was like discharged immediately, went back to the locker room and traveled back home with the team. There was an estimated practice report that said he would be limited if it were a walkthrough. Or it was a walkthrough. If it were a real practice, he would have practiced but limited, which different from the hamstring deal, right? Where his limited practice was like part of a ramping up plan to try to build stamina in that hamstring. This is a chest injury that's like an internal injury that is a totally different animal, so it probably won't, or doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. And Kevin O'Connell says good chance he plays Saturday. Justin Jefferson's telling kids he's playing on Saturday. Feels pretty good. It feels fairly likely that he plays on Saturday against the Bengals. Elsewhere in injury news, Ed Ingram was also limited with his hip injury, he was a DNP all week last week, so that's an upgrade. And Brian O'Neill, Alexander Madison, Jalen Naylor, all the guys that got hurt in the Raiders game were all DNPs, which is kind of what you would expect. So that means that this offense is slowly sort of shaping into what it will be as we go into those ever so crucial couple of Lions games, possible playoffs, what the team will be when they play the games that will ultimately determine the fate of the season, these last couple games. That's going to be a Nick Mullens-led unit, probably. I guess there's a world where Jaren Hall gets in there. There's a little bit of uncertainty from O'Connell. He says, I don't know who's going to be QB2 or QB3 yet, which is a change, right? From Dobbs just being ahead of Hall on the depth chart. Now, Dobbs might be the one that's the inactive emergency third QB, and Jaren Hall is the guy that goes in if Mullens gets hurt. But it's going to be the Nick Mullens offense. So, like I said, what you can expect, the ball to be there on time, where it's supposed to be. The ball is going to have, I will say, adequate velocity, but not exciting velocity. But Nick Mullens does have a little bit of hero ball in him. He's got a little bit of run around, try to make the improv play, force the issue kind of stuff, which can get him in trouble in the same way it got Dobbs in trouble, but to like a lesser degree. And he'll run around some. I wouldn't call him a runaround quarterback, but he's willing to break the pocket and get into improv situations. He doesn't, I like prefer to, he doesn't chase those opportunities, but he'll go there if the situation requires. Unlike somebody like Sean Mannion, that just is going to be in the pocket, and if you get in the pocket, you get to sack him, right? There's going to be a little bit more fight to it than that. I don't know if this is going to be like a lot better than Dobbs, right? But hopefully it can look like a functional offense, because it was non-functional for the last couple of games. And I want to at least be able to move the ball some. I mean, we're not going to be a unit that scores 35 a game here, but I want to be able to at least move the ball some and have a reasonable game with a defense that's just playing completely outside of its skull and just hammering people. And that's all I want to talk about. So forget all this. Whatever happens with Mullens happens with Mullens. Let's talk about the defense. That's what's coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by America's Number One Sportsbook. That is FanDuel. And if you are new to Grambling, you want to get involved, why don't you check out FanDuel.com/lockedon, where you can sign up there. You can get $150 in free bonus bets just by winning a $5 moneyline bet. So pick any money line all week. Go pick the biggest favorite of the week across football, basketball, hockey, college, whatever, right? Just go find that like 4-score favorite and slam that money line. Assuming it wins, you get $150 in bonus bets jammed right into your account. The app is super easy to use. There's all kinds of stuff that you can bet on, from spreads to over-unders to, yes, money lines and all kinds of other stuff. Slam it all together into a wacky parlay. I know y'all love to do that. So go ahead and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get going on the back end of this NFL season. Once again, that is $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet at FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. When you're done here, go check out the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube page. They've got a 24/7 live feed where they have all Locked On Minnesota sports shows playing on a loop, kind of like it's a TV channel programmed in. So you can catch up on the Wild, the Wolves. Of course, there's this show, Locked On Vikings, Locked On Minnesota Sports. Throw that thing on in the background. You can be up to date on all things Minnesota sports. And if you go to Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel, you can find the same thing, but for all sports nationwide, the entire network. Is really cool to just see the aggregate of everything we as a network have put together. Really exciting stuff. Go check it out. And hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll actually take you directly to the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube live feed. So you don't even have to push any buttons. Just watch till the end and let it take you. So, Holy Christ Flores, that's the takeaway, is goodness. I mean, you pitch a shutout, there's going to be all kinds of good things, right? You never pitch a shutout for one reason. You pitch a shutout for many reasons. And you never pitch a shutout because the other team played well, right? The other team has to have played poorly, and you have to have played well. A lot of teams played bad quarterbacks this year. Not a lot of them got shutouts on it, right? So there's a lot of really good stuff. But instead of focusing on the ways in which the Raiders failed, it's better, I think, to focus on the places in which the Vikings went above and beyond in this game, especially on the individual level. That said, there were times when the Raiders just failed. So one of the things that the Vikings have seen a ton of is perimeter screens, tunnel screens, bubble screens, smoke screens, spear screens. Two wide receiver blockers out front and somehow getting the ball to a guy behind him, right? Great way to punish a lot of blitzing. It's sort of the blitz counter du jour in the NFL right now. If you go up against a team that blitzes a lot, we're going to let them come at the quarterback and we're going to throw over to the perimeter where we hopefully have a numbers advantage. And it's a logic that makes a lot of sense, right? But it has not worked at all against the Vikings all season long. And the Bears used it the most. They didn't score a touchdown. The Raiders used it a ton again, and they didn't score a point. So if I'm Cincinnati, if I'm Zach Taylor, and I'm looking at these last two games, I don't know if I ever call one. You find something else. You have to, right? And if they just throw a whole bunch of perimeter screens again, I mean, shoot, I'll take it. But I don't think I would expect that. From a gamesmanship angle, if I'm sitting there trying to think, okay, what do I do for the Bengals? I'm not going to expect a lot of perimeter screens, because no way do they just fall right into that same trap after watching these defensive outputs these last two games, right? No way did they just say, yeah, we'll copy paste that outcome. Surely it'll work better for us. I don't see it. But one of the cool things the Raiders tried to do, and this is when you get a shutout, there's all these moments where oh, that could have changed everything, right? Where O'Connell shrugs that screen and he kind of gives it a little pump fake. The whole defense comes up. It's a double move to the outside. It was early in the game. I think it was on the first drive, actually. Double move on the outside. Caleb Evans absolutely bites on it. Probably okay that he bites on it. Probably coached to not worry about that kind of thing because there was a safety coming over the top. But it gave Aiden O'Connell a turkey hole shot, basically. A safety coming up over the top. There's a corner trailing behind. Can you hit that throw? And the answer was just like a resounding no. Throw wasn't even close. And that moment just sticks out to me as this moment where they finally found a way to punish the Vikings' tendencies. But that punished required a throw, and you ain't that guy, pal. And there you have it. And that stalled the drive. That was a first down play. Suddenly you get to 2nd and 10, and you can't run 4 yards a pop anymore or get stupid 4-yard bubble screens. So you had to try more real stuff, and the Raiders would end up punting. And a lot of drives end that way against the Vikings. So I still haven't seen a team come in with the plan that works yet. Like, oh, this is the way to do it. This is the answer. This is what you have to do. And that answer will come. I've warned you a lot yesterday too. That answer will come. Somebody will figure out that answer. Now, how difficult that answer is to execute and repeat is going to determine a lot about the long-term efficacy of this system in the NFL, and that is going to be something that is well beyond the scope of the Vikings, right? That might not even happen on the Vikings. It might happen next year if Brian Flores takes a job with some other team. It might happen over there. But when it comes to this new scheme and how far it spreads, that's going to be like the watershed moment. But I want to talk about the individuals. Danielle Hunter in particular, I shouted him out on the post-game podcast as somebody that like we kind of just noticed in the stands. But what he's doing now, I feel like advances the scheme a little bit and sort of plays it in another dimension. For example, they're running a stunt. The sack, that I think it was the DJ Wanham sack. They were running what's called a flush stunt. So flush stunt, for those of you who didn't watch my Brian Flores breakdown on patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL, go check it out. It's free to watch. Is you've got a nose tackle, and in this particular case, it was Danielle Hunter playing over the center. He counts as the nose for this one. Rushes into the A-gap and kind of crashes to the outside. So he's trying to basically get that center to follow him. And the tackle next to him does the same thing, trying to get the guard to follow him. So you're trying to get the center and the guard to work outside. And you're sort of crashing your rush in that way. And I think it was Wanham is the looper coming from edge, looping around to go kind of to that spot where the center vacated. And that's all well and good, and looked like they got the numbers advantage that they wanted. But one thing that Hunter did, instead of just crashing to the outside, he actually worked to the center's inside first, then crashed to the outside, which it's sort of like running a route a little bit. You're kind of setting him up, saying, yeah, I'm going inside. Nope, I'm going outside. Now you have to panic, but I actually wanted you to go outside the whole time. There's like this extra step to it. And I don't see anybody else on the team really doing that stuff. And it always works with Hunter. There's a real veteran prowess to it that combines with that athleticism, his ability to set the edge and all that. That's just really, really cool. But honestly, everybody in this game had like that moment where you're like, oh my God, this dude's seeing this thing in slow motion. Like, and I mean, he's reading these plays like a book. Jaquelin Roy had that moment. Jonathan Bullard had a couple of them. Harrison Phillips had a couple of them. DJ Wanham had a couple of them. Ivan Pace, I don't have to tell you about his game. Everybody did that stuff. I think this is one of the better Harrison Smith games that we've seen this year, even though it's very clear that he's no longer the focal point that he used to be back in his prime, and that's all right in your 30s as a safety. But the beauty of this defense is becoming that the players are so comfortable in it that they're adding their own little razzle dazzle. I'm seeing Mekhi Blackman trying to like bait hitch routes and like jump them. You're a rookie, dude. Like you're feeling it that good, that well. They're playing it. He's playing in like a zone, and he's got deep help, but he's playing it like super off on 3rd and 4 to the field side on the backside of a progression. And I mean, look, quarterbacks aren't going to fall for it, right? Like he's playing it super far off, trying to make it look like a receiver is open so that he can jump it and get an interception. But quarterbacks won't usually fall for that, right? But I love that. You're not only understanding your assignment, but you're understanding where your assignment exists in the context of everything else. And that means that you can add your own little personal twists to things, and you know what you can and can't get away with because you know what your job is and what it means to the scheme. They're clicking. They're really hitting their stride. Look, somebody's going to figure out how to move the ball on this. I've got a couple of theories for how that might actually happen. Like informally, I don't know, some passing thoughts. But it's really hard to beat a defense that's playing this far in sync. It rules. I don't know. I could wax poetic about this for like hours, but I guess I'll just do like 10 more minutes. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy made easy, but it's not daily fantasy as you are particularly familiar with it. It is a more than less than game that is you against the house. So the house sets more than or less than, this many fantasy points or yards, touchdowns, whatever. And you just have to pick more than or less than with 2 to 6 of your favorite players, slam them all together to see if you can't get them all right, get a better payday, and move on from there. Plus, they can combine 2 players together. For example, they could do, Nick Mullens and Jake Browning more than less than this many passing yards. Or better one would be like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, more than less than this many receiving yards. They can even do it across sports. So you could do, Danielle Hunter sacks and name a Twins player. I can't name a Twins player. And a Twins player home runs, more than less than 4.5, something like that. A lot of really fun stuff to do, and the numbers are pretty kind of wacky and out there, so you can find some edges if you know what you're doing. Go check it out at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. One of the questions that I set out to answer this week is, how did Ivan Pace do that? I mean, that's like 13 tackle game, right? And a lot of his tackles actually came in the pass game in a way that really exemplifies what this Flores D is about. So a lot of times, if you're making a lot of tackles after completions, you're kind of doing something wrong. You imagine a cornerback gave up a catch, but yeah, you got the tackle. Racking up a lot of tackles might not necessarily be a good thing. And in man coverage and certain zone coverages and stuff, it's like it kind of means that you were bad on the play, but not at least not bad enough to miss the tackle too. With Pace getting all that production, not to mention the sack and the interception, which are a little bit more, just inarguably good. With him getting all that production in the pass game, a lot of it is just how the Vikings play their zones. And it's really interesting to think about, like, once things have declared post-snap, which the Vikings do a lot of work to make sure that it's not easy to figure that out. And it's even not easy to figure that out a few beats after the snap. Things rotate so much after the snap. Guys go so far that it takes a while for the coverage to even develop into something that the quarterback can read. But once it is developed, it's kind of vanilla on the back end. Like, it's pretty normal. They run Tampa too. They run some cover 3. They run cover 3 with maybe an extra buzzer. They run, cover 1 or maybe cover 1 with a couple rats if it's drop 8. It ends up in a fairly vanilla place zone-wise. You're following the eyes. You're hitting landmarks. You're trying to jump passes. It's very old school on the back end like that. And the efficacy is because, for one, the back end has done a really good job playing tight to routes in zone match. Zone match kind of drives me nuts. I don't really like the zone match fad, and that might just be bitter tastes in my mouth from Ed Donatel. But one of the reasons I don't like zone match is because typically, for one, you're over-reliant on the quarterback side. So the quarterback can manipulate you. And for two, it's really difficult to have a landmark that you have to drop to and then break on something, because you have to finish dropping to your landmark before you can break on it a lot of the time. And it can slow things down and sort of allow some windows. And the way that Flores has these guys playing is getting rid of that second problem. They're just really good at playing tight to guys. When you're in zone match, if a receiver comes into your zone, you're supposed to play him tight until it's time to pass him off, right? You're not just sitting on it and waiting for the quarterback to try to throw it. They're too good at finding the seams nowadays. And that's why true landmark spot drop zone is very much a thing of the past. Now it's zone match where you're supposed to play tight to that guy. Don't let him find a hole. Don't let there be a hole because I'm right on in this dude's pocket the whole time. You got to come off him. Get your check down or whatever. Pace has done a really good job of that. Blackman's done a really good job of that. Metellus does a phenomenal job of that. I'm seeing some really cool stuff. And Pace in particular, I got a push notification from the Vikings app on my phone today that said they're trying to vote Ivan Pace to the Pro Bowl. That's a lot, but like, let's do that. Yeah, that's absolute. Let's go. So go vote Ivan Pace to the Pro Bowl. And Josh Metellus too. Let's get these unsung heroes a couple of songs, huh? I feel I should also mention Cam Bynum, who a lot of these like perimeter screen stupid things that you do to the outside thinking you're getting stuff, a lot of times they feel good that they have a numbers advantage because they feel like that safety has to come in from high up and go make a tackle. And he just like always does. Like it's just a really hard assignment. He just does it. It's awesome. It's just, that's not the answer you think it is because 24 is too good at this. And I haven't even said Caleb Evans' name yet. I haven't said his name enough lately. Who has really matured into a very mean corner. He plays mean. He's gonna get in people's heads. I think people might start swinging on Caleb Evans because he plays like physical in a way that's really gonna piss the wrong receiver off. But hey, if people do that, that's 15 yards on them. So more power to you. But in particular, all of these guys have done a great job of playing tight to routes. That opens things up for underneath passes, check downs, and yeah, you're finding a hole in the zone, but you're closing on it right away and tackling. And that's where a lot of Ivan Pace's tackles come from. And then a lot of them just come from him olaying the absolute heck out of a guard and getting a tackle at the line of scrimmage and just being like completely unblockable and doing stuff that just like explodes off of the tape. I can't wait to show you guys some of it on Patreon and on Twitter and all that, because you kind of just have to see it to know it. Like I can't describe it to you. There's just a lot of cool stuff going on, but everybody had their moment, right? Everybody in the secondary, everybody in the front, Ivan Pace, even Troy Dye had a moment or two. It rocks to see that kind of thing and to see the game plan really evolve in terms of how Flores started in certain fronts, shifted to other fronts, how he used his coverage, how he disguised those coverages, how he even though there was a lot of times there's only 5 guys on the back end covering because they'll blitz 6 so often, it's never the same 5-man look, you know, and that makes it really difficult to play against because you, as a quarterback, you still have to identify a coverage. You can't say, oh, there's 6 people. Oh, they play 3 up, 2 under, or three deep, 2 under. Okay, then I know exactly what, you know, where the holes in that are because I know how they play it. Nope. This one's quarters. That one's Tampa 2 from, 5-man look. And that's got a completely different look. So you actually have to still like identify coverages. You can't skip any steps in your read to make things go faster, knowing that there's a free rusher. It really rocks. Man, it's cool. It's just cool to see. Whether or not it keeps working, whether or not somebody finds out about, figures out how to explode against it. I don't really care. It's really fun to break down, and I'm going to just keep doing that. So tomorrow is Crossover Thursday. We are going to chit chat with Jake and James over at Locked On Bengals. So I will bring you that. And then, of course, we got bowl predictions on Friday. I'll see y'all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.